Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Stars and Stripes Cricket Podcast presented by DreamCricket. I'm your host, Peter Della Penna, and on today's episode, we pick up with part 2 of the interview with Jason Fox, my former colleague at ESPNcricinfo, who is a multimedia video editor who helped cut a whole lot of highlights and content that could be accessed on ESPNcricinfo for everybody who lives in the USA geographic market. And Jason gives a warts and all interpretation of life at ESPN and life in Connecticut working for Cricinfo. We'll go into that. We'll also go into some other things that he discusses about the American cricket ecosystem, which are pet peeves of his, that ties into part 1 of the interview with Jason Fox, where he discussed his experiences growing up in Kansas as part of the American cricket community, where he represented the USA Under-15 squad in 2008, which also factored into his path coming to work for ESPN and ESPNcricinfo. So we cover a lot of that in part 2 of the interview, and we'll have part 3 coming up in the next episode, where we continue to discuss Jason's 18-month career working for Cricinfo and also his connection to Mohibullah Archewal and the Jared Kimber story, the Shahid Afridi of Kansas. That comes up in part 3, but for now, part 2, we discuss a whole lot of other things. Jason and me kind of go on a few tangents, which is why we had to split this up into 3 episodes, but hopefully there's enough for everybody to chew on. And before we get to Jason's interview, I want to remind everybody that the Stars and Stripes Cricket Podcast, presented by DreamCricket, is also supported by Moosa Cricket Stadium, the first and original turf wicket facility in the state of Texas. For more information, call 713-534-2195. That's Moosa Cricket Stadium in Pearland, Texas. We've had a shower, a wardrobe change. We've had a couple days to digest part 1 with Jason Fox. Jason is kind enough to rejoin us now away from home. He's out on the road doing what he does, which is, why don't you explain what you do, Jason, nowadays?
My wife and I own a couple of different businesses, but what I'm doing right now is we own a business called BGW. We sell and service specialty coffee equipment. So we do a lot of work for some large national coffee chains that I'm sure you're probably aware of, as well as independent local shops. Basically, if there's coffee equipment out of place, whether it's espresso machines or whatever, we come in and we fix it, and then we sell it sometimes too.
How big of an industry is this, or is this something that's very, very niche that you are cornering the market in terms of specialization?
If you think about like American coffee culture, it's like 99-cent drip at the gas station, right? Like everyone, that's where they get their coffee if they're not going to a fancy coffee shop. In Europe, it's like that, but instead of 99-cent drip, it's like 99-cent espresso literally everywhere, like on like every building or every shop or every restaurant you go to has an espresso machine. Problem is in the United States that no one knows how to work on them. And it's very simple. It's like working on any other piece of like restaurant equipment or air conditioners or whatever, but people get freaked out by coffee equipment. It's kind of like a special industry. I don't even know if you would have ever even thought about coffee equipment breaking down until we were having this conversation right now, but it happens a lot. Some of the large multinational coffee companies, they don't really like it when they can't make coffee, so we stay pretty busy.
I would imagine so. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Nastush Kenjige, current USA national team player. Before he became a essentially contracted player and a full-time cricketer, his job was being a medical equipment service technician, essentially. So what he would do is he would go into hospitals. He was contracted to go into hospitals, and he would inspect X-ray machines, CAT scan machines, MRI machines, and if any of them had a part that needed to be replaced or needed servicing, he was the one who was going around from hospital around New York City to make sure hospitals had all their high-tech equipment in place. Because just like you said, if a coffee machine breaks down, it kind of eats into the bottom line. It really kind of ruins your ability to turn a profit if you're a coffee shop or a coffee chain. And just like that for him, if a hospital can't use their MRIs or their CAT scan or their X-ray machines, well, got an awful lot of patients that can't get the help they need.
The thing about it is like, ideally, something about coffee, because like, yeah, you can fix the equipment, but you also kind of need to know like what it should look like. And I didn't care about coffee at all until I met Becky, who is now my wife, but she's very into coffee. She's a certified coffee roaster. We also own a coffee shop in Wichita, Kookaburra Coffee. The business has been around for about 6 years now. I didn't know how to turn a wrench. Like I lived on some property and sometimes we had to fix stuff, but I was not like a fixing it kind of guy. And now I'm like, I can just fix it. And so that's cool. It's giving me like a new sense of confidence in something I never thought I'd do. And like I'm in the field right now, but lately I have not had to be in the field, which is where I want to be, like doing bigger picture stuff, but I'm on the road and that's just the way it goes sometimes.
You're doing your coffee repair business now, but before or in between stints doing coffee repairs,
kind of. Yeah.
you worked for ESPN at the headquarters as an ESPNcricinfo employee. You were a video editor. I think officially your title is multimedia. Yes, yeah. Multimedia editor. You came on board just after the 2014 T20 World Cup.
I remember it as just after the Soccer World Cup because that's what everyone was still like.
Well, that too. From. That's also after the T20 World Cup.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that would have been July, August of 2014. I was
checking my email the other day. I think it was like July.
Yeah. Everybody was going FIFA World Cup crazy when it was in Brazil from memory. After that World Cup ends, where there's a shared space for people who are not aware. ESPN FC video editors, multimedia editors for ESPN FC and ESPNcricinfo, they're all kind of bundled into one area in the international space in the Building 3 bunker, as we call it, in the dungeon down where there's no windows, no sunlight, and you're there doing video clip editing around the clock. So you come on board in the summer of 2014. That was going to be leading into the 2015 World Cup, which ESPN had the rights for the US marketplace. So there was a need for more staff, and you helped fill the void that was necessary and building up the staff, the very nascent staff, because it was me, you, Cahill Creamer, and there may have been one or two other people, but it was basically two or three people doing all the video editing.
Yeah. I mean, it was just in the US office anyway, for like share or rights holder content and some other stuff.
Just to explain for people who aren't aware, all the video clips that were edited and accessible for people living in the US, these are what we would call geo-targeted rights clips. All the cricket rights that ESPN owned for the US marketplace, they were all cut for a 12 to 18 month time period by basically one of three people, me, you, or Cahill. And the reason why they needed staff in Bristol specifically is because the video is coming in through the satellite stream and it has to come in through the Connecticut servers, and there has to be somebody physically on site in Connecticut to cut the clips. It's not a case of, from a technical and logistical standpoint, you can't have clips that are sent into the Connecticut satellite server that can be edited and accessed by somebody sitting in an office in India. Basically, because there were only three of us with the knowledge and the technical skills to do cricket highlights editing, you were basically working almost a 7-day a week, round the clock. Whenever there's cricket on, there's highlights that need to be cut, and there's really not much downtime. So let me ask you, as somebody who had played for USA junior national team at under 15 level, and as somebody who is an avid cricket aficionado as a player and as a fan, and then getting an opportunity to work for Cricinfo, which has this esteemed reputation around the world as the go-to place for cricket content, what made you want to apply? What was your reaction when you had first got the word that you'd been hired? And then what were your initial impressions when you first arrived?
So, it's your fault, right? You know the story?
Let's hear it.
I was on Facebook arguing with you about, maybe it was like I want to say it was like Kieran Pollard running out a non-striker. And I was advocating, and I still feel this way, that like the law about like entering a delivery stride is like vague, because to me, as soon as your back foot is planted, that makes it clear that you are going to deliver a ball. Once you have entered your delivery stride, you should be free to not be run out as a non-striker. You did not see it that way. And so we go back and forth. I don't really remember like the content. I just remember that it happened, because what happens next, I am telling my wife why you are wrong and why I am right. And she is just like fed up. And she's like, you know what? If you think that you can do a better job at this, why don't you just get a job at ESPN? And I was like, fine, I will. And so I stalked the careers page on ESPN for like 6 months, 6 whole months. And all I did is I just typed cricket and I searched. And occasionally there was like a job that was like, oh, experience in or knowledge of rugby or soccer and cricket, a bonus. And I was like, that's not for me. And then one day it was like multimedia editor, ESPNcricinfo. And I was like, this is mine. I'm going to get this job right now.
This is the time to get revenge on Della Penna.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, man, this dude is like, I love reading his DreamCricket stuff, but like, we can do better than this.
I'm going to put him in his place.
Yeah. And so I'm like sitting in my office for the business I was running at the time, and I'm just like filling out this god awful long application for ESPN. I had a family friend of ours owns like an HR consulting firm. And so I asked him if he could design a resume for me in the style of ESPNcricinfo's website. So the resume that I uploaded had my name in the ESPN and Cricinfo font, and it was laid out like the homepage of the website at the time. It was like all of my stuff. And I thought that was so clever. I was like, I also happened to include my my Cricinfo profile link on my resume. Because I was like, check me out. I'm on the website. And so like I submitted it and I was like, all right, great. We'll see what happens. Like the next day they called me and I'm on the way to dinner with Becky and I answer the phone and I'm like mouthing to her like, hey, this is ESPN. Can we like pull over or something? And she's like, yeah, take your time, whatever. And so my hiring manager interviews me, someone we both know. He asked me if I want the job like 30 minutes into the phone call. And I'm like, oh yeah, I absolutely want this job. And he's like, well, why don't you like think about it and then call me tomorrow? And so I called him tomorrow. I was like, hey, I would really like this job. And he's like, when can you be in Connecticut? I'm like, 2 weeks. He's like, it's great. See you then. That was that. I think I got like $2,000 to move.
Were you surprised that they called you that quickly? Or was it like, hey, well, I must be.
I mean, like, how many people are, honestly, truthfully, how many people are like so angry at the state of like American cricket that they're like stalking the ESPN careers page with like the idea that maybe it's possible that like if you are at ESPN, you can carry forward your love for the game and like transform and at least like do something meaningful in terms of like cricket for the United States through media.
People hearing this are gonna be so inspired because there's a big line of people who hate my guts who are now gonna be inspired by hearing your story and thinking, is that all it takes? A hatred for Peter Della Penna gets you.
I mean, it wasn't hatred. Like, come on, man. Let's be honest. It wasn't hatred. It was annoyance at a difference of opinion and some other differences of opinion than I have read in my very like inexperienced young teenage angst coming out because like I know more about cricket and journalism and the way we should talk about cricket in the United States than you. I mean, obviously, right? That's the way I felt at the time. So meeting you for the first time was like very bittersweet because I was like, man, I'm coming in, I'm gonna do it right. And then like you're really nice and you showed me how to do it. And I was like, oh shit, all right, well that didn't go how I expected. All right, cool. No, I think that like honestly, there should be more cricket journalists. Like it's like a burden and also like stupid that you're the only one. And there's more around now, but like there should be more. I think that people would be interested in hearing about like what's happening in the high level stuff across even locally across the country. I don't understand. At the time I didn't understand. I still don't understand. Why is that space not being filled? It better, because it could be better.
I've always said when people have asked me like, oh, you must really enjoy going on tours, being the only person on the road covering the USA national team. And this is back like around the time that you joined 2014, 2015. Like you said, it is a little bit different now. There are a few more guys on the scene who do show up to certain events, whether in the USA or overseas. First and foremost, Smit Patel and Nate Hayes. Smit is at Crick Buzz, and Smit also started with Cricinfo. Some people don't know or don't remember, but Smit Patel's first gig actually was doing ball by ball for ESPN Cricinfo during the ODI Tri-Series in Florida in September 2019 between USA, Papua New Guinea, and Namibia. And I actually was involved in connecting Smit with the people who are in charge of ball by ball assignments at Cricinfo, because I sent out a word on Facebook to say, hey, if anybody's interested, we need people to do ball by ball for these matches, because I wasn't going to be able to do ball by ball. I had other responsibilities and duties. And so I just sent a message because I was asking around by word of mouth And all these people who talk a big game about, oh yeah, I want to do what you do. I want to be covering the USA. I want to do this. I want to do that. Where's my opportunity? Well, I called and messaged all these people, and then all of a sudden they were nowhere to be found, or they had better things to do. And so then I just sent out a word on Facebook saying, hey, anybody who wants to do ball by ball, if you can be in Florida, or you live in Florida, or you can be in Florida in this second week of September, send me a message, send me a DM, let me know. And Smith was literally, I think he was the only person to respond, or if he was one of two people. Nobody was interested. And so it was basically a simple matter of Smith was the only one who showed interest. So I messaged Smith back and said, hey, you got the gig if you want, if you can get down to Florida. So he actually started with Cricinfo. A lot of people don't know that. And then he moved on to Crick Buzz. And I'm very happy for him, because the reality is I'm the U.S. correspondent, and there was going to be limited opportunities beyond ball by ball for him. So, but I've always said to people when they say, oh, you must love being the only person on the road correspondent, blah, 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 covering U.S. cricket. I'm like, no, it's boring. Like you tour other countries and you see other national teams with other journalists, and they've got 5, 10, 15, 20 people covering the national team. They've got huge exposure. It's boring and it's lonely. It sounds kind of pathetic to say it, but it's lonely being the only person on the road.
Right now I can totally empathize with you. I can imagine reading tour diaries or whatever and being like, oh man, I wish my life was like
that. No, but like I see the camaraderie, and there's this false, I think, narrative or false perception, this misperception of like other journalists in other countries. Yes, ostensibly on paper, they're competing with each other. They write for different outlets. They write for different websites or magazines or newspapers, whatever. But generally speaking, my read of how they interact with each other, most of these people just get along. They're peers. They're not necessarily competitors at all times. And so when I've met Smith, when I've met Nate Hayes, when I've met a few other people who have shown up to events, I'm thrilled. I love it when there are more people interested. When you joined, when Cahill joined, it was like, oh my God, I'm not alone, because I was the first one who was hired to do video editing in Connecticut back in October 2013.
And I imagine like in that space being like it was worse. It's got to be worse working by yourself at Cricinfo in that physical space, but also like the work that we had to do.
There was no help. It was me or nobody when I first started, who was doing the video highlights editing. There's this image of, oh, you're at ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. Yeah, being at ESPN is a wonderful thing to a point. There are 6,000 employees at the Connecticut headquarters, right? Or thereabouts. And there might be 500 NFL employees and 400 NBA employees. And they've got a big peer network that they're interacting with each other. They can go to the ESPN cafeteria and sit down with each other and have chats about what they're working on in basketball, what they're working on in NFL, what they're working on baseball, Olympic sports, ESPN FC, whatever. I go to the cafeteria. Who am I going to have a cricket conversation with? Like it's a lonely place. So the fact when you came on board, when Cahill came over, it was like, oh my God, like I've got people I can talk cricket with. Like this is now cool. Because you have nowadays you have Slack, and before then you would have
GChat.
Yeah, we use GChat a lot. Gmail, GChat to communicate across time zones with people in the India desk or the England desk, right? And you can communicate with them and build up some sort of bond with them to a point, right? But if you don't have that in-person interaction, it's very kind of limiting. And so, I always tell people, nothing would make me happier than 5 years from now, 10 years from now, or sooner than that, going to an event where the USA national team is playing or other events. And rather than me being the only guy, there's 5, 10, 15, 20 other reporters. I think that would be a thrilling achievement to demonstrate the health of the U.S. cricket culture once it gets to that stage, to show that it's healthy to a point that it can sustain and support 5, 10, 15, 20 full-time media jobs like you get in England or Australia or India or other countries.
I have always heard that the United States is the second largest media market for cricket after India. And so the fact that that's limited to at times 1 or 2 companies, as far as not rights holder content or just supporting infrastructure, it still doesn't make sense to me. I still don't understand.
Well, again, the thing to remember, to kind of bring this back full circle, is that despite how big Cricinfo is and ESPN is, and the traffic that is generated out of the US, and again, to go back to your original point about how is there only one person, and you come in and you were the third person. I guess technically it was me, then Cahill, then you, right? And how are there only 3 people supporting the operation out of the U.S.? And why is there only one U.S. correspondent for Cricinfo, or one person at the time covering U.S. cricket, period? Because even though India is generating the most traffic for Cricinfo, USA is generating the second most traffic. A lot of people don't know this. USA and England are always neck and neck in terms of who generates the second most traffic for Cricinfo. But where is that traffic going? What are the pages those people are clicking on? If USA was providing the second most traffic to Cricinfo and all that traffic was going to the USA national team page, I would be making 2 to 3 times as much money. I would be one of the highest paid people at Cricinfo because everybody would be coming to read my stuff. The reality is the people out of the US who supply all the traffic out of the US in terms of the geo-targeted traffic, they're not clicking on the USA national team page. They're all clicking on India stories, England stories, Pakistan stories, West Indies stories. They're not coming to the USA page. They're not coming to read about Stephen Taylor or Ali Khan or Monak Patel or Tim Royan or anybody else in recent memory. Everybody who comes from the US to go to Cricinfo is clicking on Virat Kohli, MS Dhoni, Babar Azam, Joe Root, Chris Gale. That's where all the traffic is going. And so there's a bit of a misleading stat within that.
Yeah, it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way, I think. And I'm sure that, like, I don't know if you know, or if they would even release it or whatever. I'm very curious to know, like, what the viewership of the televised USA matches were. Like, I would have liked to have watched it, but like lately, or while they were still playing test matches, I've been waking up with Penelope at like 7 o'clock in the morning, and we've been catching all of the England tests. And I don't know, she loves it. It's great. She just chills on the couch and watches cricket, and she thinks it's an awesome time, which is great for me. So like that's easy for me, but like I wasn't gonna stop what I was doing to watch a USA game only because like it's not like top level cricket, and like there are more important things that I had to do than that. Had I been in a position where I was like hanging out and that was on, I definitely would have watched it, but it wasn't like appointment viewing for me. But I'm very curious to see how many people, or if they would even, I'd be curious to know. I'd like to know how many people watched it. And if there's any like relevant traffic data, if they put anything up on YouTube or like their apps or like whatever, I'd be interested to know.
Based on previous streams that have been available for free on YouTube, my guess would be somewhere in the 1,000 to 2,000 range. And that's,
I mean, they did some promotion,
yeah.
And like assuming that they have like some viewership for the minor league, like, you know, it was different, I think, this time. I have never seen any promo for any USA streaming. The advertising on Willow is garbage, but like, I'm sorry, but it was decent promo stuff as far as like Willow is concerned for USA streaming matches. So I thought that was cool. I don't know. I'd like to know because it doesn't have to be that way. And I mean, like, I might get in trouble for saying this. The dude that hit 6 sixes the other day,
Jaskaran Malhotra.
Why on earth does he have an India grip on his bat? Seriously, that is like the central premise. That is the problem. That is the cricket culture problem with the United States. It's like they only look at Joe Root or Kohli or Dhoni, or like, you know, they're big mega stars, but like they want to be somewhere else. All these guys that are playing club cricket for the whatever country 11, like, come on, guys, like, why are we doing this? Like, this is actually silly.
I find it very, very fascinating that you bring this up, because when he hit the 6 sixes and he's in the middle of batting, and I think it was actually before then, it was when he got to his 100 and he raised his bat and the camera's on him, and then when he gets to 150 during the over that he hit the 6 sixes, I noticed it, and I remember messaging somebody. To your point, I just found it.
It's telling. It's extremely telling of the current like cultural crisis we have in the United States cricket. Everyone's got their eye somewhere else. Everyone wants to be Hayden Walsh Jr. and fuck off to the West Indies.
What message does it send? Like you said, the thing is, I noticed it. I mean, I'm watching it, and you can see Jaskaran's bat. It's the Indian tricolor. He's got a bat grip that's orange, white, and green. Okay, and for people who are not watching this, and I noticed it because, again, I'm covering U.S. national team. This is a USA national team player. And of all the things that you associate with Americana, the jersey itself, red, white, and blue, and it is a very stark contrast when you see somebody wearing red, white, and blue who then has a bat grip that's the Indian tricolor. And I messaged somebody at the time I knew who was watching the match, and I said, was it just me who noticed this, or did you see this too? And they said, yeah, no, I noticed it too. And he said, like, well,
it's not ideal.
To be fair, this is my take on the situation. Like at the club cricket level or like whatever, that's fine. It's fine. It is just a bad grip. But like when you're representing your country, which is what was happening, and to be fair, I didn't see it until like I didn't watch the game. I think from the stream, it's kind of difficult to tell, or at least like the highlights that I watched, like I didn't pick it out then. And I saw the photo of him by the scorecard before I saw anything else. That's when I noticed it. And I even tweeted about it. And I was like, someone is going to, like, you have pride in your heritage. Obviously, this is not what that's about. But when you're
100%. And just to cut in here, like, hey, it's a free country and he's got pride in his roots. I fully support that. And by all means, nobody's going to take anything away from the fact that he's got Indian roots, Indian heritage. He's migrated to the US. And so some part of him is always going to be associated with India. Having said that, when I was growing up playing sports, whether it was town league, rec league, or representing high school or anything else, I wore my school's colors, whatever they were. And that's what I represented. And I was fully invested in that. And if I were representing USA, whether it's cricket or any other sport, as an Italian American, okay, let's say if it's cricket, I can't imagine I would ever walk out with a bat grip with the red, green, and white of the Italian flag on my bat grip, being an Italian American. I'm fully invested in red, white, and blue. And so seeing somebody else do that, not only does it send a message to other people involved in the American cricket community, but it sends a message to everybody else out there too, outside of the U.S. national team. Well, this player we're coming up against in another team, is this guy really invested in the team? Or, what does this say about the team culture that this guy on a very visible stage has something very, very symbolic that contradicts the team he's supposed to be representing? I just found it's not something I would have done. Hey, if he wants to do it, more power to him. But I think it sends the wrong message. I agree.
It's like such a little thing, except for I am fully cognizant of like it's a symptom of the larger problem, and like I'm fully cognizant of the larger problem. I wonder if maybe no one even thought about it besides us, maybe us two and the person that you text or message. Like maybe we're the three people on the planet that noticed it. But like, if you're going to try to professionalize and like grow like a professional game in the United States, and even like a high level amateur game, like that's the kind of stuff that you gotta know about.
Today's episode of the Stars and Stripes Cricket Podcast, presented by DreamCricket, is also sponsored by Musa Cricket Stadium, the first and original turf wicket facility in the state of Texas, and now one of the premier venues for the minor league cricket T20 franchise tournament. Located at 5515 McKeever Road in Pearland, 5 miles off the Bailey Road exit from State Route 288, and a half hour south of downtown Houston, Musa Cricket Stadium includes fully enclosed locker rooms and change rooms, plus shower facilities after a day's play, as well as outdoor nets for all your training needs. For more information, call 713-534-2195. That's Musa Cricket Stadium in Pearland, Texas.
Well, this goes back to kind of the previous conversation we had, where the person I'm messaging was talking about this is also a born and raised American, like you, like me. Okay, and so I think these things stick out to us more from that being raised in that mindset and with that background, just growing up in America. Whereas when I've had these conversations with people who are Indian immigrants specifically, who are all part of the U.S. cricket culture, going back to the previous conversation we had in the first episode about, do you understand why it's problematic when I show up to a cricket ground and you guys are all talking in Hindi or Gujarati and I'm excluded from the conversation? And they're like, oh, we didn't mean to offend you, or we didn't mean to exclude you. It's just, this is what we're comfortable doing because we're friends with each other, blah, 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 blah. Why is that a problem? And it's, well, if you don't recognize the problem, then I don't know how to help you, because it is a problem. This is not just an American issue. In my book, Inside the Selection Room, I interviewed, it's not just about Ali Khan for people who haven't bought it or haven't read it. The book is not just about Ali Khan's journey. It's about all the players who went to the 2015 ICC America's Combine in Indianapolis, and kind of the struggles that each player goes through, the ones who made it, the ones who didn't make it to the initial squad, and then onto the CPL. And some of the ones who went to the CPL kind of fell off the radar afterwards, and the ones who didn't get to the CPL or didn't make the squad to go to Trinidad, actually, it was a source of inspiration for them to push harder and kick on. And you were there. I interviewed you for the book. You were part of the book.
I did not know that.
But you're in it. Well, now I know you haven't bought the book.
Well, where can I buy the book, Peter?
It's on Amazon. You can get it on Amazon.com. But anyway, one of the players, Lautaro Musiani, Argentinian, who had one of the most gut-wrenching experiences for people who, again, haven't read the book. It's worth buying for reading a lot of people's stories, but his is very everyman, I would say. It's something that if you're a cricketer, club level, regional level, national level, international level, anybody can identify with his experience, because unlike being a superstar or turning into a superstar like Ali Khan or one of the other players who went to the CPL like Tim Royan, he's somebody who everybody can identify with because he travels further than anybody to get to the combine in Indianapolis. He travels all the way from Argentina, travels something like 35, 40 hours on a couple different flights. And he comes to Indianapolis, has spent so much time and worked so hard to get there, to get his chance to try and make it to the combined ICC America squad to go to the Super 50. And what happens? He gets run out second ball. And, when I interviewed him afterwards for the book, he says, he had this existential moment, like, why do I play cricket? What was the point of me coming here? Which a lot of people experience. You go out to a Saturday, you spend the whole week building up to your cricket match, and you get out for his ball, or you get out for duck, and then you spend 7 hours doing nothing. Why did you come? But one of the things he said, to get back to the original point, was that even more than that, the second ball duck and having traveled, that wasn't the worst part of the experience for him. It was being an outsider and being almost unintentionally excluded, because he's there and he's a native Spanish speaker, but he speaks English, and he's coming expecting everybody else is going to speak English. So he'll have at least a common language that he'll be able to share and communicate and take part in all these experiences with the other players. And he's saying he felt very, very offended and left out, and he felt it was very disrespectful when he's there trying to communicate in English with the other players and the coaches, and yet certain coaches who were there, including his own coaches, when the teams were divided up, they're speaking in Hindi or they're speaking in another language to other players around him. And he's saying, what am I? Am I the run to the litter? What are you saying? And, why aren't you communicating in a language that all of us can understand? And it was, again, he says, rude and disrespectful. And I don't disagree with him. But again, you bring that up then with the coaches who are of Indian heritage. And the reaction is, oh, I had no idea I was being disrespectful, or I had no idea I was being offensive or being exclusive, or not really including him, or behaving in a way that would make him feel not included. There comes a point, though, when I don't think you can continue to call it naivety or being oblivious to it. After a certain point, you can't be so consumed in yourself that you are not aware of the other people around you that are not feeling welcome and the message that sends. And so, Lautaro experienced it as somebody who came into the U.S. as part of the combined trial, but I know plenty of other people. I hear this a lot from West Indian players of West Indian heritage who are American born and raised, or players of West Indian heritage who are born in Jamaica, Guyana, or elsewhere, who come into a team. They hear the Asian players speaking in Urdu or Hindi or Gujarati, and it's not a very welcoming atmosphere to be a USA national team player when that's the environment you're in. So whether it's by spoken word or by symbolic action, going back to what you said about the bat grip, like you said, it points to a larger systemic issue with U.S. cricket culture where there is not a feeling of unity. And again, it's free country. You can do what you want. But if the national administrators are making noises about wanting to unite the cricket community, that was one of the mission statements for the ICC, to unite everybody and bring everybody together and advance cricket going forward and invest in grassroots. You can say all those things, but then having outward projection where symbolically or verbally you're doing something else on the field or in the cricket ground, it contradicts that. You can have your private cricket club. You can run your cricket club as whatever you want if you've got a private cricket club. But if you're going back to one of the points we made, where you've got this feeling of discrimination in the U.S., where again sometimes it's not even good enough to be Indian. If you're not Gujarati, or you're not Tamil, or you're not Punjabi, or you're not Telugu or Hyderabadi, you're not welcome. That's not going to help the overall mission of trying to forward the game in the country if there's always going to be parochial factions organized in such a way, and it goes from local level all the way up to the national team.
I think overall, like, the state of cricket in the United States, it's like so self-serving for expats that moved away from wherever they moved from and they just want to play cricket again. And like, that's good for them. And like, I want them to play cricket, obviously, because like cricket's an excellent game, and it's like, it's more than just a sport. It's like a language for us to communicate through, and it's great. But there is like literally the amount of people that have like a forward eye on like actually growing the game or building something in the country is like minuscule, like so small, like not even like a proper fraction of players or administrators in the country. And for a country that has done like a lot of excellent things to just like continue to fail in this regard, even through at least well-intentioned like efforts to counter that, to continually fail in the same ways over and over and over again. I don't actually understand. You would have think that like we would have succeeded by now, because like we'll do it one day, but like we haven't. And the amount of times we've tried, or like the amount of opportunity that there is to like get it right, you would think that like we would do it once at least. I didn't realize that story, and I don't recall the Argentinian guy, but I totally empathize with that. And it's like a step further for him, because like, you know, he's making an effort in a language that is his second language to like be a part of the community. And you're right, it's not naivety, it's just like straight up ignorance at this point. Because like, if the goal is to grow the game in this country and bring people in, then like, is it? Because if it was, that we wouldn't be doing this still. Like still. It's
100%.
When I talk about this, it makes me really disappointed, because like, I think if you show people cricket and you take away like all the BS, like tea and crumpets, and like you get rid of some of like the hyper British nomenclature around cricket, it stops being the butt of a joke and becomes like a real sport that people actually might like the amount of American or like non-cricket native people that we have introduced to the game, and who like come out, and even if they just like watch one game and they tell you that they liked it, like they're not lying, they did enjoy it, they did see something in it for them, whether like playing or watching or like whatever. It's honestly just like complete and utter failure on the part of anybody that has any power in American cricket to build anything.
We could go
upset, actually.
We could go on all day. We can go down this rabbit hole as deep as we want to, Jason. But
Yes.
We'll try and bring it back to Cricinfo and ESPN. So you told us,
which is why I went to ESPN, because I wanted to change that.
You wanted to change it, and now you're back in the coffee industry, the coffee servicing industry. So I think we know how the story went in terms of how well you succeeded in your objective. And I want to get into that. So you had this ambition to come to ESPN just to show me up, prove me wrong, show, hey, there's somebody who can do it better, and I'm going to show them how. You get there, and somehow I completely disarm you with my unexpected kindness. And so we're working as a team, but it's a very challenging environment, not as a team, but with other factors, external factors. And I want to get your thoughts on, again, going back to, I guess, one of the questions way back when, what were your expectations of what you thought the job was going to be about, or what you thought you could do in terms of having an impact, just like we just said, about what you wanted to do to help build up awareness in the wider sports community or in the cricket community, the US cricket community, in terms of what you could do through your job and how you could fulfill that in your role, and how things eventually turned out.
Yeah, so I guess like I kind of knew what the job was going to be like. We were going to cut videos, right? And we were going to put videos on the website. But I guess like I was hopeful that maybe some of the content that I was going to create might find its way onto like an ESPN platform that lots of people watched, right? And I did. I have a reel that I have on Google Drive of all the stuff I did that went on SportsCenter, or like all the stuff I did that made it to a property that was like not strictly ESPNcricinfo. And I'm really proud of that stuff. Even if John Anderson took the piss out of it twice on air, I was really pissed about that. And I saw him in the gym, and I was like, I can't just like mouth off to this dude, but like I want to be like, come on, man, don't do that. You didn't have to do that. Like you could have, you punched down, you didn't have to do that, but whatever. What was I going to do? Some like 21-year-old kid like shit talking big name talent at ESPN that probably wouldn't not have gone over well.
You were going to wait for him to get off the treadmill and then get back into the locker room to have a word.
Yeah, exactly. And I halfway wonder if like I should have said something. I don't know. Anyway, so I mean,
I have to get in here too, just on that point. There's some people who like your experience, but I also would say there are some people who were really good about showing cricket respect.
I also encountered those people, especially people that had an eye on the money. They got it. They were like, I mean, to them it wouldn't matter like what it was, but like they did appreciate it for like in the sense that like it was a profitable or at least like interesting property for the company, if for no other reason, and they took it seriously because of that.
Well, that or I think my experience with the two people I always bring up, I discussed this in a previous episode with Todd Myers, were Lisa Kearney and Matt Barry. And when I had my interactions with Lisa Kearney, and I remember specifically, she read out the highlight at the end of the 2014 T20 World Cup when Sri Lanka won. And, I had to do a script and get her the pronunciations of Kumar Sangakkara and Jai Wardner and whoever else, and Lasith Malingan. And she took it very seriously. And when I wrote her an email to thank her, her explanation was, well, hey, this is a World Cup. Doesn't matter if it's a cricket World Cup or a FIFA World Cup or a curling World Cup or a Tiddlywinks World Cup. It's a World Cup. So the people who love this sport are seeing this as the pinnacle of the sport. And when I read the highlight, it should be read with the respect or the reverence or whatever word you want to use to show that this is the elite moment in this sport. And it's not something to poke fun at or do a tongue-in-cheek joke. This sport deserves a proper read like any other sport would in a World Cup moment. And she did that. And I was always grateful for that. You didn't get that with everybody. Okay. There were some experiences with certain people. It wasn't a given. That was what you were always going to get. But when it did happen with somebody like Lisa Kearney, who's now at FanDuel, she does fantasy sports and sports betting, anchoring and coverage with FanDuel, especially for the NFL. And Matt Barry has kind of gone on to do more college football play-by-play stuff over and above SportsCenter. But those two in particular, I was always grateful because, sometimes you did get an anchor who wasn't going to give it the treatment you envisioned. But when they did, I was always grateful.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just like the mark of a true professional. Yeah, so I get there, I see what the job is, I see the shithole that we're working in, to be completely fair. As in context to like the rest of the facilities and like the awesome campus that ESPN is, I did an Ask Me Anything on Reddit as a ESPNcricinfo employee, and I so quickly deleted my Reddit account because like the answers I were giving these people about like what it's like to work at Cricinfo, I was just reading them and I was like, this sucks. Like they're attacking me like I'm like being disrespectful about this, and I was like, okay, I gotta shut this down because like this is not cool. So I see that, right, and I'm learning how to cut video because I did not know how to do it, even though I told them I did. I bought a Udemy course that I never watched, and I showed up and you taught me how to use Quantel, and that was that. I figured out the rest from there. Even still, and I believe it to this day. And I still don't know if I like play it back in my head, like how I could have gone about this better. I'm sure there is a way, at least I could have like voiced these opinions to somebody. Whether or not anybody picked them up, I doubt it. But still, I think that ESPN, as the worldwide leader in sports, has missed a gigantic opportunity for the second largest captive market in the world for this sport. There's so many ways that they could have capitalized on cricket, like so many ways. And I don't know if it's because it's like, it doesn't fit their model, or they're not open to like a new model. And given at the time when we were both there, streaming was still very new for ESPN and they weren't very good at it. I think that ESPN has really and continues to really miss a profitable property just in general, because they're like not willing to adapt or fully understand the market. And they're just not, I don't understand like why it's so far out of their realm, because like to me, I shit you not, I was at the airport the other day and you know what was on TV in the middle of a Sunday afternoon? Professional cornhole. Why? Like, I don't understand. Is it because like people play in their backyard so they can see it? Like when I see bowling on ESPN on a Sunday afternoon, like I'm sure they paid a lot of money for that spot, but like more than like cultivating a new fan base, or even if they don't put it on ESPN properties ever and they make it all pay-per-view, like there's so much cash there for them. And I just continually do not understand why that is the case. And I was certain that I could convince somebody. I think that cricket at ESPN USA is poorly managed, has continued to be poorly managed, is misunderstood, and is undervalued. And I was hell-bent on telling somebody that.
Why? All of the above. Why do you feel all that? This is just from your own experiences having worked there, or this is what you observed since you left?
A little bit of both, right? So like working there. So at the time, I think ESPN had West Indies stuff, like home internationals and some of the domestic stuff. They had England home series and all the England domestic cricket. They had New Zealand home stuff and New Zealand like home internationals. I don't think they did any New Zealand domestic cricket. They had the CPL. For a time, they had the IPL.
The 2015 World Cup. That was the main
and
thing.
Of course, yeah,
the ICC
2015
rights.
World Cup. Yeah, the ICC rights for that. Because I'm aware of the market share for cricket in the United States, I'm aware at the time how kind of inaccessible it was to watch international cricket and how like easy it would be to bring a ton of new customers into the ESPN ecosystem. And like they kind of half-assed did it with ESPN3 and all of the streaming stuff there. But like it would have taken they have the infrastructure to do it. Am I right that they're doing like pay-per-view for UFC stuff now? Kind of. If ESPN's worried that like people are not paying $5 of their cable bill to get ESPN anymore because people are ditching cable, $15 a month for Willow should be a godsend for them in proportion to like their larger customer base. Like a super reliable, super happy to do business with you customer that is provided like literally something that they bring in off of satellite and they put on their property, and that's it. They don't have to touch it ever again. They can run commercials if they want, or they don't even have to because they're getting their like streaming subscription cash. Like now that Willow is backed by like the Hindustani Times, like, and they've got a ton of money, presumably. Like I understand maybe it's more competitive now, maybe, but even still, it can't be that expensive. I don't understand the business side of it to not do it, to not like have as much cricket content and make people pay for it as possible. Like that is the key. Like don't give it away for free on ESPN3 because like the people that are watching cricket on ESPN3 are never tuning into SportsCenter for the most part. So create something for them. It is very cheap for you you have all the infrastructure to do it.
I think the bigger issue isn't so much lack of interest in doing stuff for cricket. I think it's just the overwhelming weight of all the other rights content they have at work, and they find time and space to do it in terms of if they paid a couple $1 billion for NFL rights and a couple $1 billion for NBA rights, and now they've reacquired NHL to start up again this season, and Major League Baseball, Sunday Night Baseball, and they've also got college football and college basketball. You've got 6 major.
They find time for bowling
rights. Well, but again, like you said, is that something that, cornhole or bowling or, I've seen, what is it? Professional tag, right? More than likely that's paid for in terms of ESPN isn't paying the rights. The league is paying ESPN to show that. The paradigm is flipped.
The difference though is like, I would love to see ESPN or ESPN2 like playing live cricket matches like on television, like traditional television. Like, yeah, I want that. I knew for certain that that probably wasn't going to happen though, even though like I thought maybe I could convince somebody that they should put it on there. But even if they create a separate digital space specifically for cricket, like rights holder content in the United States, and they market that aggressively to the market that would buy it, eventually I think it would transform. It's like its natural like order of things would be to put it on ESPN2 or whatever. Their reluctance to try to cultivate new fan bases for stuff that isn't already present in the United States, I think is a missed opportunity. Didn't NBC buy the rights for the Big Bash for a while, and were they playing that on television?
They had for it was like 2 or 3 seasons right around the time that we were both at ESPN.
In my mind, and this might be a little bit of bias, I think personally to introduce Americans to cricket, the premier rights contract would be the Australian rights. And here's why. Because it's not English, it's not tea and crumpets, and all of the things that go with like, oh, it's so English cricket. America has a love affair with Australia, has forever. The way that the like Australian cricket is produced, I think is very pleasing to the American eye. And also it's like in a perfect time slot.
The time slot is the most important thing in my eyes, but also, I mean, why does it look so American or pleasing to American? Because one of the people who's involved in the promotion and the behind the scenes consulting is American. Dan Magala, who's at Forefront. has done extensive consulting work with the Big Bash, and so there's an American flavor to it because you've got an American directly involved. That's a big factor.
And so I just I think that it's possible to market cricket to Americans, and even if you're doing it subtly, the Australian rights package was very important, it's central to that, because you take this for what it's worth. You can't shove cricket in a box oh, it's only for people from India or people from the Caribbean or people from England. It gives the any American sports fan, it gives them oh, that looks familiar in a way to me that cricket has never looked familiar to me, in my opinion. I think you can cultivate it, and I really wanted to do that at ESPN, and I learned very quickly how not possible it is to do something like that, just because of the sheer incompetence at some of the levels. Any organization, you look behind the curtain, you're what is this garbage? How does this job even get done, actually? Till knowing that there are actually very smart people around, and not fully understanding. I still don't know all of the roadblocks to do any of the stuff that I would do if I was in complete control of cricket media at ESPN. So a little there's a lot of ignorance on my part. I understand that. I was hell bent. I was certain that I could convince somebody that cricket belonged at a more visible part of ESPN.
Well, if you thought that chat went in a whole lot of different directions, buckle up for part 3 in the next episode, because Jason Fox has plenty more to say about his time at ESPNcricinfo, which included a very, very challenging experience at the 2015 World Cup, where Jason, myself, and quite a number of other staff were huddled up in Bristol, Connecticut during a seemingly interminable blizzard, which basically lasted, it felt like, the entire length of the World Cup in February and March of 2015. And then we talk about Jason Fox's family story tied to Mohabil Archibald, again as profiled by Jared Kimber in the Cricket Monthly in 2017, the Shahid Afridi of Kansas. Check that article out if you haven't already. And that'll be good preparation for the final part of the conversation with Jason Fox on the Stars and Stripes Cricket Podcast. I want to remind everybody, if you haven't already done so, please subscribe on Patreon. I appreciate everybody who has done so far, and you help to keep the podcast going on a week-to-week basis, and I appreciate your support. I also want to remind everybody to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already, in audio form or in visual form, on YouTube, on Spotify, on Anchor FM, on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, and plenty of other podcasting platforms. That's it for this week. I'm Peter Della Penna, reminding everybody, God bless America, and God bless American cricket.